Hello everyone, welcome to Canteen Cup. My name is Scott, and look, the sun is out again. Maybe my yard will dry out enough for me to get some more work done. Anyhow, I'm gonna break away from the lockdown videos I've been doing and talk about something else I've been pondering the past couple days, and that is, doing the lone wolf thing. Um, we hear a lot about it. We hear, lone wolf versus, community tribal crew thing, and I've been pondering it lately. I have been watching Life Below Zero, and it's got a couple of lone wolf types on there, and it got me thinking, you know, um, about it. I am, in some respects, I'm kind of like some of those guys on Life Below Zero. I like to do things by myself. I like to get things done by myself. I like to work things out by myself. Um, and so I've always been that way. Sometimes when I try to get help from other people, either I don't get it or they just get in the way. But that doesn't mean I'm a lone wolf. But I wanted to talk about the lone wolf mentality, the people that say, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna grab my AR and my backpack and I'm gonna go off into the woods." And I think the reality is that's really not feasible. And I want to talk about that now. Like I said, I have a lot of lone wolf behaviors, but I still have my community. I still have my tribe. In fact, one of the reasons why I moved out to where I moved was because I have family out here, people I can depend on to help me if I need help. In fact, during this whole pandemic thing, we've been getting text messages, phone calls, and emails from our family and friends checking on us. And of course, we do the same thing with them. So it's been, we've been exercising our tribe community relationships through that way. Also, two members of my family are also in the medical fields, and so we are, kind of covered that way too. But getting back to the lone wolf thing, and is it feasible? I've got notes, and I'm gonna talk briefly. I've got notes, and I've recommended before that people keep one notepad. And this is what I do. I put all my notes in this pad. It's kind of like a journal, but really I keep all my notes, and I keeps all my thoughts in one place. I know some people have a notepad for this, a notepad for this, a notepad for this, but I find it easier to go back through my notes um, when I just keep one journal. And what I do is when I fill this journal up, I put it aside for a year, and if I haven't gotten back into it within a year, I typically throw it out. And of course, in the meantime, I've started a new one. But I get a good solid bound journal, so I don't rip the pages out, because I want to maintain this information. And it's also big enough I keep it on my desk open with a pen nearby, so if I take a quick note. But I recommend that. Now I also keep a little notebook for field notes, but that's a whole different story. That's when I'm away from this, and typically it's just a quick note, and I'll come back and add it to this journal if it's important enough. Now, do I also keep a diary slash journal? Yes, I do. And you should be doing that too. Either keep a journal like this or keep a diary type journal, especially now when we're going through this pandemic. You should be doing lessons learned. I do it through the video. I do it in writing. I try to capture what I've learned about this for next time. And you should be doing that too. What worked for you? What didn't work for you? What could you do better? So getting back to the lone wolf thing, is it feasible? I think it can be. Not necessarily that it is, but it can be. And I want to talk about that now. In this series. It's a Disney Channel series, Life Below Zero. There's a man in there. His name is Glenn Villeneuve. He's probably late 30s, early 40s throughout the show, and he's the closest person I can think of that kind of lives the lone wolf mentality. But there's caveats, and why it works for him and why it may not work for those of us who think we want to do it. So let's talk about security. Okay, Glenn lives about 60 miles from the nearest road. He is probably the only human being within about 100 miles of where he hangs out. So for him, things like security is not a problem. He has to worry about animals like wolverines and bears and things, not people. So for him, the security works out. For the rest of us that live in more populated areas, now there's a lot of things to consider. Here we have to consider the zombie hordes coming through, or just people foraging, looking for food. When you're a lone wolf, you're by yourself, and you have to sleep sometime. And while you're sleeping, you are basically unprotected. So unless you can, be like Glenn and get miles and miles away, then you are vulnerable, possibly to attack because of that. You have to sleep. And a lot of times when you sleep, you snore. So it is a security issue. One thing that you may have to do as a lone wolf is you may have to be prepared to move at a moment's notice. In other words, you have to travel light, you have to travel fast, because as a body of one, or even as a body of two, you're not really in a very good position to take offensive operations. Probably everything you do will be defensive in nature, which means you'll be moving away from the threat rather than moving towards it. Now, there can be exceptions, but you'll probably be moving away from the threat, and then you have to be able to, like in the middle of the night, grab your blanket, grab your gun, grab your bag, and go to escape capture, killing, whatever, people going after whatever resources you have. Also too, illnesses and or wounds, such as like a gunshot wound, all of those can be life-threatening. They can take you out, and you don't have anybody to help you treat the wound or treat the illness. So that's kind of the security stuff I was thinking about, that you've got to have more help to survive. Now let's talk about logistics. Now again, going back to our example, Glenn Villeneuve, which I think is a pretty good example because he does live out in the Brooks Range of Alaska. He's got hundreds of square miles of land for him to use, and only him. He's like the only human out there. And so he has got all that space to himself. So he can, one man living in that much area, you can be supported by the land. And even so, Glenn does have a base camp, and he does have stuff. Okay, when you look at his videos, he's got aluminum ladders, he's got axes and saws, he's got a gun and bullets, he's got a stove, he's got his shelter is made, and so he's got stuff, and it's more stuff that he can carry on his back. Now he does go away from his camp and make other camps further away, but he goes back to a place of replenishment. He has stuff, and he gets resupplied. Typically in the show, you see about once a year he travels back to Fairbanks, which is a couple hundred miles away, and then he typically takes a plane out either to at or near his property, and he's got stuff that he has gotten, from civilization. Occasionally when he's out there, like the episode I watched last night, he had gotten a snow saw, which is something he hadn't had before. So he continues to get resupplied. He gets bullets. He gets, he gets flour, things that you can't make in the wild. Now, his, a lot of his meat, a lot of his food he does get from the land. However, understand that before Glenn became this lone wolf type person, it took him many years to prepare to do this. And he says so himself. It took many years to get ready to do what he's doing. And then once he got there, his first couple of years weren't as good as what's happening now. He had to figure it out, and he's lucky he survived it. So it took years of planning, and it took years of skill. He got to know the land. He got to know where the animals were. He got to know when they went into hibernation, if it's a bear, when they migrated in the case of moose, caribou, or sheep. He took opportunities when he sees a wolverine or a porcupine or something. He'll kill it and he'll eat it. He goes after ptarmigan. He's got a shotgun out there. He's got a 22. He's got, looks like a 44 Magnum pistol. He's got a 30-06. So he's got stuff, and he gets resupplied. Even the mountain men, the guys that went up in the mountains and did all the trapping for that short period of time and that limited number of actual mountain men, even they came out of the mountains to get resupplied. Even in the movies you see them, it's them either on a horse, but they always have a pack horse behind them filled with stuff. So even they had to go in for supplies and then take them back out in the woods. So really the bottom line of what I'm saying is, is the lone wolf lifestyle doable? And I want to say yes, but I'm going to really kind of change that to a maybe or a maybe yes. And I believe it is, but it's only under a particular set of circumstances. I think if you live like Glenn does on Life Below Zero, where he's doing that, at least 9 months out of the year, maybe more, where he has practiced it for years, where he has learned. Again, he knows when the hunger times are, when it becomes what they call hunger country, and there's no game, and he knows to prepare for that. And then he knows where the animals are, and he knows when they go through, and he knows what he has to get to survive each year, and that includes wood and all the other stuff. So is it doable? Yes, but when we talk about it from a more suburban, urban, and even rural areas, maybe not so, because you have more people around. Like I said, where he is, he's one person in several hundred square miles. He doesn't have the problems we have, such as good people doing bad things. So I think for most of us, while we would like to be the Lone Ranger, Lone Wolf person, I don't think it's feasible. And I'm talking about people of all ages, not just my age, as I'm a little bit older. But I think everybody needs some community, especially if we are going to be where civilization kind of goes into turmoil. Here so far, this is our day 7 of our lockdown. I'm not seeing any wild stuff going on. Food is still being delivered, everything's still okay. But as things digress, we may have to take other actions to protect ourselves, our tribe, and our community. Hopefully that's not going to happen. But we need to be aware of that and be able to mitigate that. So that's my thoughts on lone wolf. Is it doable? Yes. For most people, probably not. For those of you that are not trying to get, community or tribe, I suggest that you try a little harder. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and form a group and train in small unit tactics and all this other stuff. Have training on the weekends. A lot of it is just get to know your neighbors and be friends with your neighbors and start helping each other. That's your community. And then if things get bad, then you can talk about, maybe, things are getting bad, and how about to protect your family, my family, and our other neighbor's family that, you know, maybe we should set up a roadblock on our street and limit who comes through and who doesn't come through, or that we set up a system of alarm that when one of us needs help, the rest of us come a running. You know, whatever you set up, but it doesn't have to be a formal, you know, we have a team, you know, we have A teams and B teams, and we have, you know, everybody's got to have 1,000 rounds of ammo. Just get to know your neighbors and learn to help each other and talk to one another. That's what you need to be doing. And start with that. And then you can work on other things. But the first part is go meet your neighbors. You know, when I drive up and down the road, if I see one of my neighbors out in his yard and he's close enough to the road, I'll stop my truck, roll down the window, we'll chat for a couple of minutes. I'll introduce myself, and I don't normally like to do that, but I make myself. I introduce myself, I get their name, we chat a little bit, and then the next time I see him, I do the same thing. So, that's really all I got for now. I'll do my 7-day thing coming up later on in the day. You know, right now we have went from a social distancing order to a stay-at-home order, so we're in for at least another 2 weeks. But I'll talk about that later. It's not part of this video. But I wanted to kind of change things up a little bit. So I hope you all are doing well. You know, I care for people. I hope everybody makes it through this. Don't be stupid. You know, pay attention to what's going on around you. Make sure you have plenty of food in the house. That window may be closing, maybe not. I don't know. But, you know, be prepared for in case it does. That's all I have. So everybody stay safe and stay secure. And we'll see you out there.